Alrighty, everybody. Raids, dungeons, PvPs, delves. Almost all of the endgame content coming in the War Within. Let's check this out. This is a 20-minute plus video. Now, we've reacted to probably... We had 19, 17, 4 videos. We've reacted to 12 videos already today. And we're going to have 4 more after this one, but we're going to be doing those on another night because this one's 20 minutes long, and we do have to get some World of Warcraft gameplay in today. So for those of you tuning in, much appreciated. Let's go. Not gonna talk too much, but I will talk over it when needed. Let's enjoy this one together.
Welcome to a special edition of Wowcast, and thank you so much for joining us. Launch is right around the corner, and today we are joined by a few incredible guests to share how
I know the dude in the green shirt.
has evolved, as well as new
That's
features
it.
like delves and warbands. Please introduce yourselves.
Actually,
Hello,
take that back. I know the lady that was just talking and the dude in the middle.
I'm Laura Sardinia. I'm lead UX designer in the WoW team.
Hey, I'm Morgan Day, one of the associate game
My
editors
guy.
on World of Warcraft.
And I'm John Mark Campbell. I'm a lead gameplay engineer on World of Warcraft.
How has the team been approaching what's waiting for players at max level for the War Within?
As we've been talking about, the content that players will be experiencing once they reach the end game, there's really been 3 main pillars we've been focusing on. The first is variety. We want to make sure that there's all kinds of activities for you to do, whether it be in the outdoor world or with some of our new features like delves that are really going to add some new variety for those players. Additionally, we really want to focus on progression and giving players new challenges to try to overcome in the end game. And finally, the story and making sure that that narrative is front and center. Now, whether that's tied into some of these features and some of the content that we built there, or maybe it's focused on the end game campaign that is going to be built out as...
I can't believe we got just over a day until the game gets released.
And I'm excited about for the War
The
Within, which is one of our major
pre-release.
features, Warbands. If you aren't familiar, this is a feature that really ties all your characters together, and really this is our opportunity to make sure that we're really respecting the time of the player behind the keyboard and not constantly asking you to, maybe re-earn something on one character that you've already earned on another one. That's all changing with the War Within, which is really exciting.
John Mark, can you tell us more about the significant undertakings that warbands is about?
Yeah, it's no easy task to reimagine in a modern context what we've done over the past 20 years. I think Morgan at BlizzCon, you called this several features in a trench coat.
Yeah.
And it's very true. In a nutshell, it's really a philosophical shift in how we approach the game. Instead of being from a character focus, we're taking a step back and approaching it more from what the players accomplished over the entire time that they've played the game. Historically, we've added on pieces to individual systems from the engineering side to support features going into expansions. But if we could wave a magic wand and go back 20 years ago, knowing where we're headed today, likely we would have organized those things very differently from an engineering perspective.
Yeah, and I really feel like this is easily one of the largest undertakings that our engineering team has had to, develop for an expansion. We always used to look at, updates to future patches where let's make this a little bit easier for alt to catch up or earn some progression there. Where now that is something that we're really architecting from the
That's
forefront.
one of the biggest huge bonuses and pluses I've ever seen from an expansion. And there's no negative that can happen from
What
this.
value do warbands bring?
It's all about being able to transfer stuff between your characters.
I love it so far.
If you want to send from one character to the other, you just put it in the warband bank. If you have currency that you want to send from one character to the other, you can just grab
Yeah,
it.
the warband feature has been an absolute blessing.
Or if you're a
I've-
druid and you're going through one
Every aspect of it,
piece of plate gear,
from
you
reputations to
want
currency,
Yeah, one of the things
to
I love about
the
it
warband
is
bank.
the shared renown, right?
Everything
Like,
about
there's
it is
so
just
much
amazing.
reputation that I'm gaining across my characters that will all be combined and consolidated on one account-wide reputation there. There's a lot of fun stuff that also enables.
It'll allow me to play
trying
alts
to
now,
find,
which is kind of nice.
more variety in the way I approach the game. For instance, I was leveling, I think, my second character on the beta recently, and I made sure to go out and turn warband questing on so that I saw all the quests that I already completed. It's a little bit less opaque, so it's kind of transparent, and that way okay, I've done that quest on one of my other characters, so I can kind of cherry pick all the reputation from quests that I haven't completed yet.
I've noticed that
Something else
already.
When it comes to maybe gearing that new character, there's actually a new type of item called Warbound Until Equipped, or WOO. This is a new item that will drop in all kinds of endgame content, including things like Mythic Plus and Raids, where these will be bonus drops, where they'll drop slightly lower item level where you might have earned that reward, and then you can put that in your bank or send it to one of your alts, and actually once you equip it on one of your characters, then it will bind to that character. So the fact that it binds to the warband means we can be really generous with that gear as we're dropping for alts.
I imagine as part of this overhaul that it's led to some unique challenges with the UI.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. UI revamp continues, and Warbands was a great opportunity for us to revamp the character select. Last time when we did a big entry screen update was during Shadowlands. So with Warbands, we did a whole big user experience revamp there. We kept the right side list, but now you can drag and drop much easier your characters, and we have a favorite section there, which is really cool because they're all cross-helm characters that you can have. So you don't need to be back and forth choosing characters. They're all gonna be there for you, very, very easy. And also the tooltips are all new. Now you just mouse over and it's all there for you. So pretty great improvements overall, and also the new bank for your warband characters. So a lot of good improvements that we wanted to make sure it feels natural to players and it just feels great. That's what a good UI should be, you know. So yeah, that's what we're looking for.
There's a lot of functionality out of that too. Like you can craft straight out of your warband bank, so you can just dump all that stuff in your warband bank, and you know, one of your other characters who might be able to use that profession stuff will then be able to access it much more quickly. You don't have to mail it around, and you know, it's really looking to streamline a lot of those experiences.
For Mythic Plus runners or dungeons, any kind of activity that requires a group, we also revamped that left panel, the little ear pane that you push it out. You can now apply raid markers much easier. You can also assign different folks in your group to do so, which before wasn't that easy. And also you can change very easily as well the difficulty of the instance.
One of the things I love that we added is hubs, right? So on the main map, there's often, as you are progressing in the end game, there's all kinds of content that might be really consolidated in one area, and sometimes it's like, oh, there's so much stuff here, and it makes the map feel like it might have a little bit of clutter on it. So we now have a way to kind of consolidate some of that.
The hubs, as Morgan was explaining, when you get in the War Within, you're gonna see this castle city icon that we're gonna have in each zone, and Dornagal is the biggest one. When you click on it, you can see the city map, and one of the technologies that we want to add, the hub gonna prioritize for you what is the most important content for you to do. Of course, you can choose to do something else, but we want to clean up the surroundings of hubs and
Grateful for that, by the way. My OCD is hating it. It was getting cluttered.
Evolve and get players' feedback. Also, for the end game, we have a new type of quest that's called meta quests, but those are end game important repeatable quests, and then they are the classic exclamation mark, you know, above the NPC heads, but it's blue because it reminds of the old dailies, but you're gonna have spikes around it, so you know that's like,
ow, crap, fuck.
Yeah, so the hub when there's something available as a meta quest for that week, the hub will show that to players, so you know that's something that you should do. If you don't have too much time, you probably should prioritize those because they give very good end game rewards. So that's the kind of technology that UI is trying to.
They should have made the color different.
Or your veteran players, or you just want to, you know, do the easiest thing.
But I'm not going to complain.
And that's going to be all there on the map for you, so you don't have to go back to the icon soup.
Are there any extra quality of life improvements to the UI?
Sure, I've seen a lot of the community very happy about the search bars, so we keep adding those. With Warbands, we have a search bar.
Search bars!
In Dragonfly, we have the search in the options menu.
Yeah.
Professions, of course, if you're searching for something specific. Bags, we added that in Dragonfly, and the talents. But now, the spellbook is getting a whole revamp, and
add professions back to it, please.
The spellbook looks beautiful now. Like you can have 2 pages, and that way you don't have to paginate as much.
You have specs, talent, spellbook, add professions tab.
At the top, which is the collapse one, comes back to the original classic size. So we know some players really love that, and we want to make sure that everyone is happy with the new spellbook. Having the time to do all that stuff makes us so happy because we want to keep the classic WoW look, even though it looks modern, but it still feel WoW, and that's really important for us.
You ruined the professions tab. That's the one thing I would say is negative right now.
How is that going to be approached in the new feature Delves?
Yeah, so, you know, like we've discussed, Delves are really bite-sized content, really targeted on those players who love progression in the outdoor world and maybe aren't so excited about going into group content or queued content. Something that they gave us feedback on is that they really wish that there was a way for these to be a bit more difficult and maybe give them a bit of a challenge too. Delves, while the rewards might end at tier 8, so that the item level that you're getting stops there, the difficulty tier goes to 11. And when you reach that difficulty, there will be a hard mode version of Zekfir, which for people who might be familiar with some of those solo challenges like the Mage Tower of the past, this will be a new solo challenge for players to really, try to tackle over time. And we imagine this is something that will take quite a bit of effort and, progression to get to the point where you'll be able to defeat Zekfir at that difficulty. And waiting for you, if you're able to do that, is a really awesome, unique, kind of voided out version of that customizable delve mount that you're going to be rewarded with very early on in your delve progression.
Can you talk about the different varieties of delves?
Yeah, so with delves, there's 13 delves in total, and something that...
Alright, so we've already moved from warbands to delves. Warbands are awesome. We already know. And then we kind of spoke about the user interface. The only thing I do not like so far is that professions tab missing. It's not really missing, it's still there, but it's missing from the spellbook.
That we really wanted to focus on was to make sure that each delve had multiple variants, right? So while there's 12 delves that you'll experience and be sent to, a couple in each zone, every time you zone in, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just some small tweaks here and there, like, oh, the spawning changed a little bit, or maybe there's some traps that look a little bit different. The actual objectives are changing. Sometimes the way you traverse through the delve completely changes. Maybe you're going to start at the end of the delve this time and work your way backwards. So we wanted to make sure that these different variants were really distinct with each new delve. And we also wanted to make sure that, like I said earlier, with progression to be a large part of this. So there's a couple different aspects of that. For one, the Great Vault, which is something that a lot of our Raid and PvP and Mythic Plus players are familiar with, is going to get an outdoor row with the War Within. So the loot that comes from delves, we wanted to make sure that while it was bite-sized content, that doesn't mean it can't be really rewarding, right? So if you're able to, work your way up and defeat level 8, which is where the loot kind of caps out at, your Great Vault will actually reward you with items that are higher item level than you would get out of like a Mythic plus 10 end of run chest. So it's really good loot.
Yeah, it's really
and we
rewarding.
want to make sure that you're using that gear that you're in along the
I
way.
wonder how that's gonna scale.
Delve tiers and finally take the fight to Zekfir and by extension.
Like, is it gonna be too easy to get, or I wonder how that works.
Should be a big part of our endgame story as well, and making sure that they're paying into this narrative of Xalatath and all of our epic heroes that we're experiencing along the way. Something else that we added in the UI for delves is, there's now a whole tab that exists for delves that will exist down with the adventure journal, where you can see Mythic Plus and see your seasonal journey there. Now when you go to the delves tab, you can find the Great Vault from there. You can also see Bran, who's your companion. You can change his spec and see kind of the progression there. So lots of fun UI additions and improvements that have made delves that much more fun.
The team has also made significant changes to the Mythic Plus dungeons. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so actually, not only is Mythic Plus getting some changes, but also the core progression of dungeons is shifted quite a bit. So if you've been playing Dragonflight Season 4, you might have seen that Mythic 0 has actually gotten quite a facelift. Something that we have noticed in the past is Mythic 0 was great for like 2 weeks of an expansion, and then nobody really needed to do it anymore because they had just progressed into Mythic Plus. So with the War Within, a Mythic 0 will be the equivalent of what, if you haven't played since Shadowlands, Mythic 10 might have been. So it's quite difficult and will be equally as rewarding, but we wanted to capture that audience of people who loved that feeling of the mega dungeons where there's still progression, but also there's no timer, right? So if that was something that maybe put you off from Mythic Plus, this is something that you can still do with your friends, and hey, you can run AFK if you need to in the middle of these.
I thought I was going to like the changes they did to Mythic Plus dungeons. I do not.
Major affix refresh. We have gone through multiple iterations of that on the beta. We got a lot of feedback from our first iteration of it and have really pivoted significantly since then.
It was kind of neat because we had some players that said, we really like the direction of these affixes, these I don't know about, and then other players that felt the exact opposite. I'm not sure about these, but I really like this direction. And really what it helped us crystallize was we had multiple groups of players that wanted different challenges out of the same Mythic Plus system, Historically, affixes have been a one-size-fits-all approach to challenge and variety. But it was kind of a cool moment. Morgan came to the gameplay engineering team and was like, hey, we got this feedback. We have this idea for making affixes target different level ranges rather than applying to the entirety of Mythic Plus. And the design solution ended up being pretty elegant for engineering to implement. It was like this beautiful confluence of events where we were able to turn this around within, I don't know, 2 weeks or something like that, and get the full revamped system back on the beta for players to test.
Yeah, it was really awesome to see kind of that all come together so quickly. So, you know, what players have seen now and what will be going live with The War Within Season 1 is a version where Xalatath actually plays a major role in the affixes, you know, from the beginning up until level 12. And it's very much one of the goals we had to make sure that the story plays a part in all of our endgame content. So we really wanted to kind of achieve that by having her kind of show up in your Mythic Plus dungeon and maybe
that's kind of cool.
And mess with you.
You know, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft this year, and if you're coming back from a break or if you're a completely new player, just learning the dungeons can be daunting on top of affixes and things like that. So this sort of granular way that affixes apply challenges to the dungeons allows players to engage with them in the way that they want to be challenged.
Something that we added in Dragonflight, which is the follower dungeons, are great for that, because you can have NPC companions, which are not real players, playing with you through the dungeon. And let's say you just changed to a new spec, I want to be a healer now, and I really want to try that first before I really go into a dungeon with new players.
We know that players in dungeons often are afraid of trying out new specs, and with hero talents there's different flavors of new combat for people to try out, and follower dungeons provide a way for you to just go in and feel it out and not be too concerned about how you're impacting other people.
Approachability has been mentioned a few times. How are we applying that to PvP?
Yeah, there's actually a new feature that I am personally going to play quite a bit, where you're going to be able to experience essentially rated battlegrounds. It's called Rated Battleground Blitz, which is a smaller number of players, and you'll be able to earn conquest and, you know, all the awesome rated PvP rewards while playing battlegrounds. Because, you know, we know there's a ton of people who love battlegrounds, but you know, the jump into arenas sometimes might be a little bit scary. That is a much more smaller experience, and you know, each little mistake counts for a lot when you're in an arena. Where in a battleground, you know, there's a lot more going on. Usually they last longer, there's objectives. So we really are excited about that new feature. I know I have done a ton of, I know the community calls them YOLO RBGs, where you can just do RBGs, don't worry about voice chat, you just kind of go in and play. I always love running into those, so having this feature will kind of take that place for me, so I'll be able to earn points early on in the season. You know, I know we mentioned the Great Vault quite a bit earlier when we were discussing this. We actually got a lot of feedback from our PvP players that they don't love having to have the Great Vault be
I would love for them, because Solo Shuffle is basically 3v3 arenas, but solo queued. So it kind of removes 2s, 3s, which 5s are already removed, but 2s and 3s. Battleground Blitz is basically the solo queue for Battlegrounds, which I think is kind of good.
So you can feel like you're
it caters to the solo queuing type of people like me.
The barrier to entry is a little too high for you to get into that. So not having that in the Great Vault actually solves a lot of problems for us, giving players more agency in how they're rewarded, and also we have much stronger catch-up on things like our conquest currency for PvP players. So we think that will be a big step forward for that audience, and hopefully, you know, inspire some people to check out PvP in the War Within.
Raiding is an integral part of endgame. How is the team approaching raids this tier?
Yeah, so Nerebar Palace is going to be an epic experience. You know, Nerubians galore in there, and one of the cool new features that we're introducing with War Within is to play through the raid, or at least experience the ending with Queen Ansurek solo. So we wanted to make sure that for people who were really engaged in that story at the end game, but maybe didn't want to go into queued content or don't have a whole group to go into the raid with, they'll still be able to see that epic finale. Something else that I think is really fun, there's a lot of variety in player skill across all of our player types in the game, and we have a lot of difficulties for them, but even within a single raid there can be a lot of, you know, progression that you're experiencing. And with Dragonflight we added a new item upgrade system where you could upgrade some of your gear, but some players also found that they might not be able to quite get over that hurdle on one of maybe the end boss or something that comes as the penultimate boss. So we're adding a new quest that will unlock about a month into the War Within, that every week you'll get a little bit more powerful. It's kind of reminiscent of like Hellscream's war song back in Icecrown Citadel, but you'll have to kind of earn your way through that progression. So not only is there awesome gear to be earned as you progress through the raid, but we wanted to make sure that for people who might take a little bit longer, there's some more progression along with just the gear.
That buff's applied throughout your warband, right? It's not just on the character.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
Like, that was something that maybe would have just been applied to a single character, but in War Within, that buff is across my whole warbands.
That's cool.
While we are talking about raids, I'd love to bring it up, the self-highlight option, which I'm a huge fan. You can highlight yourself and persist that.
I love it.
Now,
Something
you
so
can
small,
make
but I love it.
an icon on your head.
Fuck the
and
icon, but
nobody
everything
can
else
take
is
it
great.
from you. So that is awesome. You know, for players, I'm included, that I cannot find myself in the whole chaos of a raid boss or even Mythic Plus. There's also another option that's called Show Silhouette when obscured. If you have that on, there is a silhouette of your character between that pillar. Let's say it's a pillar, so you see your character there. So
I always call those like the flag boss or the tree boss.
I better have turned that on.
That's really cool, Laura, and I love that. And you know, not only those cool options, but there's so much more to explore in the War Within, and I'm really excited for our players to come on this journey with us. Both players who've been with us all through Dragonflight, as well as players who might be returning.
Thank you so much for joining
That's
us.
it?
We hope
Oh.
you enjoyed this look into endgame content, and we look forward to seeing you in Kazalgar.
Very, very cool. The only thing I hated was that they didn't talk about the professions tab not being in the spellbook. But other than that, I'm looking forward to everything. Subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitch, follow us on Kick. I am going to be bringing to you guys as much content as I possibly can, and I cannot wait. Thank you.